They called it the divorce of the century. But nobody saw the body count coming. Alexander Mercer, the billionaire tech mogul, thought he was untouchable. He thought he could parade his 22-year-old mistress down the red carpet, while his wife, Isabella, sat at home 8 months pregnant with his heir. He thought his ironclad prenup and his army of lawyers would leave Isabella with nothing but the clothes on her back. He was wrong. Dead wrong. Because Isabella wasn't just a wife. She was the one holding the keys to his entire empire. And when a pregnant woman has nothing left to lose, her revenge isn't just sweet. It's total destruction. This is the true story of how the underdog bit back. The flashes of the paparazzi cameras were blinding, turning the humid New York night into a strobe-lit nightmare. Outside the Pierre Hotel on Fifth Avenue, the city's elite were gathering for the annual Gold Horizon charity gala. It was the kind of event where a single ticket cost more than most families earned in a year, and attendance was mandatory for anyone who mattered in the financial world. Isabella Mercer stepped out of the black town car, her hand instinctively resting on the heavy swell of her stomach. She was 8 months pregnant, her ankles swollen, her back aching, wearing a custom silk gown that had been let out 3 times to accommodate the baby. She looked around, expecting to see her husband, Alexander Mercer, stepping out of the car behind her. But the door slammed shut. The driver, a man named Thomas, who had driven her for 5 years and knew her coffee order by heart, refused to look her in the eye. "Thomas?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Where is Alex?" "Mr. Mercer arrived separately, ma'am," Thomas said, staring straight ahead through the windshield. "He instructed me to drop you at the side entrance." The side entrance, like the help. Isabella swallowed the lump in her throat. She was the wife of the CEO of Mercer Dynamics, a company currently valued at $40 billion. She was carrying his firstborn son. And yet, she was being ushered in through the service doors while he... A roar went up from the front of the hotel. The crowd screamed. The paparazzi went into a frenzy. Isabella walked as fast as her condition allowed toward the main foyer, slipping past a confused security guard. She reached the edge of the grand ballroom just as the main doors swung open. There he was, Alexander Mercer, 6'2", wearing a bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo, looking like the master of the universe. He had that smile, the shark-like grin that had charmed Wall Street investors and broken competitors. But he wasn't alone. Hanging on his arm, draped in a sheer, diamond-encrusted dress that left nothing to the imagination, was Chloe St. James. She was a 22-year-old influencer whose father owned a chain of hotels in Miami. She was glowing, throwing her head back and laughing, her hand possessively clutching Alexander's bicep. The room went silent. The music seemed to stutter. Every socialite, every hedge fund manager, and every rival CEO turned to look. Everyone knew Isabella was pregnant. Everyone knew she was supposed to be here. Alexander didn't just bring a mistress, he flaunted her. Isabella felt the blood drain from her face. She stood near a pillar, hidden by the shadows, watching the humiliation unfold. Is that Chloe?" a woman whispered loudly near Isabella. "With Alex? Where is Isabella?" "I heard she's too fat to leave the house," another voice snickered. "Alex needs someone who matches his brand value." Alexander stopped in the center of the room, grabbing a microphone from the MC. He looked drunk, not on alcohol, but on power. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alexander boomed, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "Thank you for coming. Tonight is about the future. And speaking of the future, I want to introduce you to the new face of the Mercer Foundation, Miss Chloe St. James." Chloe beamed, waving to the crowd like royalty. "Thank you, Alex," she purred into the mic. "I can't wait to start cleaning house." Isabella stepped out of the shadows. She couldn't stop herself. It was a visceral reaction, a mother protecting her dignity. She walked into the light. "Alex," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the silent room it carried. Alexander turned. His eyes landed on his wife. There was no shame in his face, only annoyance. He looked at her pregnant belly with a sneer of disgust. "Isabella," he said coldly, lowering the mic, but not enough so that the front row couldn't hear. "I thought I told Thomas to take you home. You look tired." "I am your wife," Isabella said, holding her ground, though her legs shook. "This is our charity. And that is the woman you've been sleeping with in our Hamptons house." The crowd gasped. Chloe laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Oh, honey. Wife is just a title, and titles expire. Look at you. You're a mess. Alex needs a partner, not an incubator." Alexander signaled to his head of security, a massive man named Brock. "Escort Mrs. Mercer out. She's making a scene. The hormones are clearly making her hysterical." "You can't do this," Isabella whispered, as Brock grabbed her arm. Alexander leaned in close, his breath smelling of expensive scotch and mint. "I just did. My lawyer sent the papers an hour ago. Check your email. You're done, Bella. I'm keeping the company, the houses, and once the kid is born, I'll take full custody too. You're unfit. Look at you screaming at a charity gala." He straightened up and turned back to the crowd, smiling. "Sorry about that, everyone. Mental health is a serious issue. We will get her the help she needs." As Isabella was dragged out of the ballroom, the last thing she saw was Chloe St. James, placing a hand on her flat stomach and winking at her. Isabella was dumped on the curb outside the Pierre. It was raining now. She didn't have her coat. She checked her phone, her fingers wet and slippery. Subject: dissolution of marriage. Mercer versus Mercer, from Sterling and Associates. It was real. Alexander had timed it perfectly. He had waited until the week before his company's massive merger with Omnicorp to serve her, ensuring she would be disoriented and weak. She hailed a taxi, giving the address of their penthouse at 432 Park Avenue. She needed to get her things. She needed her safe. When she arrived, the elevator code didn't work. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Mercer," the doorman said, looking genuinely pained. He liked Isabella. She was the only one who asked about his kids. Mr. Mercer called. He changed the codes 10 minutes ago. He said, "You don't live here anymore." "My medicine is in there," Isabella said, panic rising. "My passport, the nursery, everything for the baby." He said, "Your personal effects have been sent to a storage facility in Queens. Here is the address." He handed her a slip of paper. Isabella stood in the marble lobby, shivering. She had no access to their joint accounts. She checked her banking app and it flashed, "Access denied." He had frozen everything. He had left her with the credit card in her purse, which was likely cancelled too. She was the wife of a billionaire, and she didn't have enough cash to buy a sandwich. She went to the only place she could think of, a small, dusty law office in Brooklyn. It belonged to her father's old friend, Saul Berkowitz. Saul wasn't a high-powered corporate shark like Alexander's lawyer, Marcus Sterling. Saul was a man who handled wills for grandmothers and disputed parking tickets. "Bella?" Saul looked up from his desk, his glasses sliding down his nose as she stumbled in, soaking wet. "My God, child! What happened?" She collapsed into the chair, recounting the night. The gala. Chloe. The lockout. Saul listened, his face growing paler by the minute. He pulled out a copy of the prenup she had signed 5 years ago. He adjusted his glasses and read it, sighing heavily. "Bella, this is ironclad," Saul said softly. "Alexander's father wrote this. It says if you divorce, you get a lump sum of $500,000, but you waive rights to all company shares, real estate, and future earnings. It also has a morality clause. If you create a public scandal, like getting thrown out of a gala, he can petition to withhold even that lump sum." "He set me up," Isabella whispered. "He provoked me so I would make a scene." "He's a monster," Saul agreed. "But he's a monster with the best lawyers in New York. If we fight this in court, he will drag it out for years. He will bleed you dry. You have a baby coming in 4 weeks. You have no home, no money." Isabella looked at the rain streaking the window. She thought about Alexander's smirk. She thought about Chloe calling her an incubator. She stopped crying. Something in Isabella's eyes changed. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. It was the look of a woman who realized that playing by the rules was what got her killed. To survive, she had to break the game. "Saul," she said, sitting up straighter. "Do you remember what I did before I married Alex?" "You were a coder," Saul said. "A brilliant one. You worked at that startup, the one Alex bought." "No," Isabella corrected him. "I didn't just work there. I wrote the core algorithm for the neural link interface, the technology that Mercer Dynamics is based on. The technology he is about to merge with Omnicorp for $10 billion. Saul frowned. "But you signed over the rights when you married him, didn't you? It was part of the merger of your assets." Isabella reached into her damp clutch bag. She pulled out a small, silver USB drive. It looked old, scratched. "Alex thinks I signed over everything," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He thinks he owns the source code. But Alex is arrogant. He never checks the back-end logs. He never reads the raw data lines." "Bella, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that 5 years ago, I embedded a dead man switch in the code," Isabella said. "It requires a biometric key, my fingerprint, and a specific sequence of keystrokes to keep the system stable. Every 30 days I have to verify it. If I don't, the algorithm degrades. It slows down. It starts making mistakes." Saul's eyes widened. "When did you last verify it?" "The day before yesterday," Isabella said. "Which means Alex has exactly 28 days before his entire $10 billion empire starts to glitch. And in 28 days, he's supposed to sign the merger deal with Omnicorp." "He'll kill you," Saul whispered. "If he finds out, he will destroy you." "He already tried," Isabella said, placing a hand on her stomach. "He thinks I'm just a scorned wife. He has no idea I'm the architect of his entire reality." Isabella stood up. "I need to disappear, Saul. I need a safe place to have this baby. And then, I'm going to let him burn." "Where will you go?" "There is a place in Switzerland," she said. "The clinic where my mother died. They are discreet. They owe me a favor. But I need money to get there. Real money. Not credit." Saul opened his safe. He pulled out a stack of cash, his emergency fund. "It's $10,000. It's all I have liquid." "It's enough," Isabella said, taking it. "Bella," Saul warned. "Alexander Mercer is finalizing a divorce. He will be watching the airports." "I'm not going as Isabella Mercer," she said. She pulled a pair of scissors from Saul's desk. With one swift motion, she grabbed a chunk of her long, beautiful chestnut hair and hacked it off. She looked in the reflection of the window. The meek, elegant wife was gone. "Isabella Mercer died tonight at the Pierre Hotel," she said. "From now on, I'm just the ghost in the machine." 1 week later, the sprawling penthouse at 432 Park Avenue looked different. It smelled different. The subtle scent of jasmine and old books that had always defined Isabella's presence was gone, replaced by an aggressive cloud of Chanel No. 5 and new leather. Chloe St. James was busy erasing the last 5 years of Alexander's life. "Alex, baby, look at this," Chloe chirped, holding up a delicate, hand-knitted cashmere blanket in a soft cream color. It was something Isabella had spent months making for the nursery. "This is so depressing. It smells like... old lady. Can I toss it? I want everything in the nursery to be modern. Think chrome. Think stark white." Alexander looked up from his tablet. He was sitting at the Italian marble island in the kitchen, reviewing the pre-merger valuation protocols. The numbers were astronomical. He was about to become one of the richest men in modern history. He looked at the blanket, then at Chloe. She was wearing one of Isabella's silk robes, cinched tight around her impossibly small waist. "Toss it," Alexander said distractedly, taking a sip of his espresso. "Whatever you want. Just make sure the place is ready for the Architectural Digest shoot next week. They want to feature the new look of Mercer Dynamics." "You're the best," Chloe squealed, dropping the heirloom blanket into a garbage bag filled with Isabella's maternity clothes. Alexander felt a microscopic twinge of guilt, which he immediately crushed under the weight of his own ego. Isabella had brought this on herself. The public scene, the hysteria. He needed a partner who could handle the spotlight, not one who crumbled under it. Chloe was young, hungry, and moldable. She was perfect for the brand. His phone buzzed. It was Marcus Sterling, his lead counsel. "Sterling, give me good news," Alexander demanded. "We have a slight complication with serving the final papers, Alex." Sterling's smooth baritone came through the speaker. "Mrs. Mercer has vacated the premises." "I know that, you idiot. I locked her out." "No, I mean, she has vanished," Sterling clarified. "Her phone is dead. Her credit cards haven't had a single hit in 7 days. We checked her father's old friend, Saul Berkowitz. He claims she came in soaking wet the night of the gala, borrowed $50 for a cab, and left. He says he hasn't seen her since." Alexander laughed, a cold, barking sound. "She's hiding. It's pathetic. She's probably curled up in some cheap motel in Jersey, crying over old photos. She has no money, Sterling. She's pregnant and alone. She'll crawl out when the hunger sets in or the baby comes. Keep the private investigators on it. But don't waste too much money. She's irrelevant now." He hung up. Irrelevant. That's what she was. He had the code. He had the company. He had the girl. While Alexander sat in his tower of glass and steel, believing he was untouchable, Isabella was learning how to become invisible. She had traded her platinum life for cash and paranoia. $10,000 doesn't last long when you are buying silence. She had purchased a burner phone and a heavy, used laptop with cash from a pawn shop in Queens. She stayed in SRO hotels where they didn't ask for ID, sleeping with a chair wedged under the doorknob. Her body was screaming. The stress was causing Braxton Hicks contractions that doubled her over in pain multiple times a day. Her ankles were so swollen she could barely wear the cheap sneakers she'd bought at Walmart. But her mind was sharper than ever. She sat in a grimy motel room near JFK Airport, the neon sign outside flickering red across her face. She opened the laptop and connected to the hotel's unsecured Wi-Fi through 3 different VPNs. She navigated to a dark web forum she hadn't visited since her hacking days in college. She needed a new identity. Not a great one, just one good enough to get her on a plane to Europe without triggering Alexander's alerts. She found a user named Null Vector. Saul had vouched for him years ago. Isabella, typing as Cypher Mom. Need travel docs. Fast. EU citizen preferred. Clean slate. Null Vector, 5K, Bitcoin only. Meet in 4 hours. Port Authority, lower level, by the pretzel stand. Come alone. It was half her remaining money. That night, wearing an oversized hoodie and a baseball cap over her hacked-off hair, she met the contact. He was a skinny kid, no older than 19, shaking from energy drinks. He slid a manila envelope into her tote bag and took the roll of cash without counting it. Isabella retreated to the bathroom of the bus terminal. She opened the envelope. It was a French passport. The photo was a digitally altered version of her old driver's license picture, with darker hair and glasses. The name read Ilara Vance. It wasn't perfect, but it would have to do. She looked at herself in the cracked mirror. Her eyes were sunken, dark circles bruising the skin beneath them. She looked nothing like the billionaire's wife who graced the society pages. "Goodbye, Isabella," she whispered to her reflection. She placed a hand on her stomach, feeling the baby kick hard. "Hold on, little one. Just a little longer. We're almost free." The next morning, Ilara Vance boarded a budget airline flight to Lisbon with a connecting flight to Zurich. She paid cash for the ticket at the counter, claiming she lost her credit card. The agent, tired and overworked, didn't even blink. As the plane lifted off the tarmac, leaving New York City behind, Isabella didn't look back. She opened the heavy laptop on her tray table. She brought up a terminal window and typed in a series of commands that would bounce her signal around the globe. She accessed the public-facing server status of Mercer Dynamics, all systems green. Latency, 12 MITs. She checked the date, day 14 since the last verification. The countdown was halfway done. Alexander was still sleeping soundly in his golden cage, completely unaware that the key he thought he owned was slowly dissolving in his hands. The private clinic, Haus Edelweiss, sat nestled in the foothills of the Swiss Alps, overlooking Lake Zurich. It was the kind of place that didn't advertise. You only knew about it if you had a net worth equivalent to a small nation's GDP, or if, like Isabella's mother, you had died there, leaving behind a substantial endowment. Dr. Elias Weber, the clinic's director, was a man of discretion. He remembered Isabella as a teenager, weeping by her mother's bedside. He asked no questions when she arrived unannounced, looking like a refugee, carrying nothing but a laptop and a fake passport. He gave her a private room in the East Wing, away from the other patients. He took her cash for the first month's stay and waved away the rest. "Your mother was a good woman, Isabella," Dr. Weber said, his German accent thick but gentle. "You are safe here, but your blood pressure is dangerously high. The stress, it is too much for the baby. You must rest. No phones, no internet." Isabella nodded meekly, promising to obey. The moment he left the room, she pulled the laptop from under her mattress. It was day 22. She logged into her back door. The data stream from Mercer Dynamics was changing. It was subtle. To an untrained eye, it looked like normal traffic fluctuation. But Isabella saw the pattern. The latency was spiking, up to 45 meters, then back down. The neural pathway predictions were showing a 0.04% error rate increase. It was beginning. The degradation phase. 4,000 miles away in New York, the tension in the boardroom of Mercer Dynamics was thick enough to choke on. It was final due diligence week. The Omnicorp acquisition team had descended like locusts. Their CEO, Lydia Croft, was a woman legendary for tearing apart companies during audits and lowering the acquisition price at the 11th hour. Lydia sat across the 20-foot mahogany table from Alexander. She was 60, with steel-grey hair cut in a severe bob and eyes like flint. "Your Q3 projections are ambitious, Alex," Lydia said, tapping a manicured fingernail on the glass report cover. "But my tech team has some concerns about scalability. The neural link algorithm is proprietary. You've blocked us from auditing the core code." Alexander leaned back, oozing confidence. Chloe was sitting next to him, trying to look interested, but mostly scrolling through Instagram under the table. Lydia. Alexander smiled, his shark grin on full display. You don't ask Coke for their secret recipe before you buy the bottling plant. The code is the crown jewel. It works. It's generated 40 billion in value. You've seen the demos. I want to see a live stress test, Lydia demanded. Today. I want to see it handle peak load traffic simulations before I sign off on $10 billion. Alexander felt a flicker of annoyance. Fine. Ravi. He snapped his fingers at his chief technology officer, Ravi Patel, who was sweating profusely in the corner. Set up the simulation. Show Lydia what my engine can do. Ravi nodded nervously and typed furiously into his console. The massive screens on the wall illuminated with complex data visualizations. The simulation began. For 10 minutes, it was flawless. The AI handled millions of simulated transactions per second, the neural pathways adapting in real time. Alexander watched Lydia's face. She was impressed, despite herself. Then, it happened. On the main screen, a data packet flow turned red for a fraction of a second. The system stuttered. The latency counter on Ravi's screen jumped from 12 ms to 150 meters. Ravi gasped quietly. What was that? Lydia asked sharply. That lag. Alexander hadn't even noticed it. He looked at Ravi. Ravi, pale as a sheet, quickly typed a command to clear the cache. The screen returned to normal. Apologies, Ms. Croft. Just a minor server handshake issue on the simulator side. Our internal network is undergoing routine maintenance. The core code is stable. Lydia narrowed her eyes. Maintenance? During final due diligence? That's sloppy, Alex. Ravi, I told you to postpone all maintenance, Alexander barked, throwing his CTO under the bus without hesitation. Fix it, now. It's fixed, sir. See? All green. Ravi pointed to the screen, his hand shaking. Lydia didn't look convinced, but she let it slide. Fine. We sign in 5 days. But if I see another handshake issue, the valuation drops by $1 billion. When the meeting adjourned, Alexander grabbed Ravi by the arm and dragged him into his office, slamming the door. Chloe slipped in behind them. What the hell was that? Alexander hissed. I don't know, Alex, Ravi stammered. The core shouldn't have lagged like that. It's been running perfectly for 5 years. It's almost like it hesitated, like it was looking for something it couldn't find. Well, find out what it is, Alexander threatened. If you embarrass me in front of Lydia Croft again, you won't just be fired, Ravi. I'll make sure you never work in tech again. Alex, baby, calm down, Chloe cooed, rubbing his back. Ravi's just a nerd. He'll fix it. Let's go get dinner at Nobu. You need to relax. Alexander shrugged her off. Not now, Chloe. This is business. He stared at the server screens in his office. For the first time since Isabella left, he felt a seed of genuine fear. He didn't understand the code. He had always relied on Isabella for that. And now, Ravi. In Switzerland, the pain hit Isabella like a freight train. It was day 25, 3 days left on the countdown. She was in her room, monitoring the latest latency spike on her laptop. It had hit 200 meters this time, when her water broke. It wasn't a trickle. It was a gush. Panic set in. She was 2 weeks early. She pressed the call button for the nurse, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The contractions were immediate and violent. Dr. Weber arrived within minutes. His face was grim as he checked her. Isabella, the baby is in distress. His heart rate is dropping. We need to do an emergency C-section. Now! The next hour was a blur of bright lights, surgical masks, and terrifying urgency. Isabella was alone. No husband to hold her hand. No Saul to reassure her. Just the cold reality of the operating room in a foreign country under a fake name. She gripped the edge of the operating table, her mind vacillating between the fear for her child and the vindictive satisfaction of what was happening in New York. Let it burn, she thought. Let it all burn down. Then she heard it. A thin, reedy cry. Dr. Webber lifted the baby up. A boy. He was small, but he was pink and furious. They wrapped him and brought him to her cheek. He smelled of blood and new skin. Isabella kissed his forehead, tears streaming down her face. "Leo," she whispered. "My little Leo." The moment she touched him, the anger that had sustained her for weeks evaporated, replaced by a ferocious, overwhelming love. The game had changed. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival, her son's survival. She looked at Dr. Webber as they wheeled her into recovery. "I need my laptop," she said weakly. "Isabella, you just had major surgery. Give me my damn laptop," she commanded, with a voice that belonged to the CEO she should have been. The nurse reluctantly brought it. Isabella, groggy from anesthesia, opened the lid with trembling fingers. Day 25 was ending. Day 26 was beginning. The system log from Mercer Dynamics was bright red. The latency was now permanent at 300 milliliters. The AI was starting to make logic errors in its predictive modeling. The degradation had moved from a glitch to a cascade. Isabella looked at her sleeping son in the bassinet next to her bed, then back at the screen showing Alexander's empire beginning to crumble. "Happy birthday, Leo," she whispered. "I got you a $10 billion fireworks display." Day 28, the day of the signing. The boardroom at Mercer Dynamics was set up like a coronation. Champagne flutes were arranged in geometric precision. The lawyers from Omnicorp, led by Lydia Croft, sat on one side. Alexander's team sat on the other. The deal was valued at $10.2 billion. Alexander was set to personally pocket $6 billion after taxes. He was already spending it in his head. He had a super yacht on hold in Monaco and a private island in the Exumas pending contract. "Shall we proceed?" Lydia asked, unscrewing a Montblanc pen. "Subject, of course, to the final system integrity check running as we speak." "Of course," Alexander said, his palms sweating slightly. He hadn't slept in 2 days. Ravi had been patching the latency issues with temporary code bridges, digital duct tape, hoping it would hold for just 1 more hour. On the main wall, a giant dashboard displayed the live status of the Mercer neural link. It was steady. Green. Alexander signed the first page of the quadruplicate contract. Then the room went silent. A low, dissonant hum started emanating from the server racks in the adjacent glass-walled room. On the main dashboard, the green lights flickered once, twice, and then, simultaneously, every single status indicator turned a violent, flashing red. System failure. Core dump. Initiated. Kernel panic. "What is that?" Lydia asked, her pen freezing in midair. "Ravi!" Alexander roared, standing up so fast his chair toppled over. "Kill the feed! Cut the monitors!" "I can't!" Ravi screamed from his console, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "It's not responding! The admin overrides are locked out!" On the screen, the code began to delete itself. Lines of proprietary data, worth billions of dollars, were vanishing in real time, replaced by a scrolling skull and crossbones Asakao art. Then, a text box appeared in the center of the massive screen, 10 feet high, for everyone in the room to see. User authentication required. Biometric signature missing. System lockdown initiated. Contact administrator. IM. IM? Lydia read the screen, her eyes narrowing. She looked at Alexander. "Who is IM, Alex?" Alexander stared at the screen. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking like a wax figure melting in the heat. Isabella Mercer. It's a glitch," Alexander stammered, but his voice lacked its usual power. A prank. Someone hacked us. That's not a hack, Alex, Lydia said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. That is a dead man's switch. I've seen them before. The system thinks the owner is dead or absent, so it's locking down the IP to protect it. She stood up. This technology isn't yours, is it? Of course it is. I own the company. You own the shell, Lydia spat. But whoever I am owns the soul of this machine, and without them, you are selling me a $10 billion paperweight. She capped her pen. The sound was like a gunshot in the silent room. The deal is off, Alex, and I'm calling the SEC. Attempting to sell technology you don't control is fraud. Lydia, wait! Alexander lunged for her arm. She shook him off with disgust. Don't touch me, you're toxic. Come on, everyone. The Omnicorp team filed out. The champagne grew warm. The scrolling skull on the screen mocked him. Alexander turned to Ravi, who was cowering under his desk. Fix it, Alexander whispered, his voice trembling with rage. I can't, Ravi wept. I checked the source code, Alex. It's encrypted with a polymorphic key. It needs her fingerprint. It needs her retinal scan. If we try to brute force it, the system wipes the servers. Everything goes. The customer data, the algorithms, the backups. We lose everything. Where is she? Alexander screamed, grabbing a heavy crystal vase and hurling it through the glass wall of the server room. It shattered, sending shards flying. Find my wife! Chloe St. James, who had been live streaming the celebration on her phone, quickly ended the video. She looked at Alexander, who was purple with rage, veins bulging in his neck. She looked at the deal-cancelled alerts already popping up on Bloomberg terminals. I think I'm going to go to my mum's house, Chloe said quietly. Get out! Alexander screamed at her. Get out, you useless parasite! As his world collapsed, Alexander stood alone in the ruins of his boardroom. He had the suits, the penthouse, and the title. But Isabella had the kill switch, and she had just pulled it. The stock market reaction was instantaneous and brutal. News of the failed merger and the system instability leaked within minutes. Mercer Dynamics stock, ticker MDYN, opened at $145 a share. By lunchtime, it was trading at $42. By the closing bell, it was at $12. Alexander lost $3 billion of net worth in 6 hours. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. They were screaming for blood. They wanted Alexander's head on a platter. The SEC had already opened a formal inquiry into misrepresentation of assets. Alexander sat in his office, the blinds drawn. He was drinking whiskey straight from the bottle. He looked disheveled, his tie undone, his eyes bloodshot. He had his team of private investigators on speakerphone. Tell me you found her, Alexander rasped. We have a lead, Mr. Mercer, the lead investigator, a former FBI agent named Miller, said. We tracked the IP address that triggered the lockdown. It didn't come from a server farm. It came from a secure medical facility in Zurich, Switzerland. Switzerland? Alexander rubbed his temples. She's at the clinic. Her mother died there. Go get her. Drag her back here if you have to. We can't touch her there, sir. Swiss privacy laws are strict, and there's something else. What? We pulled the flight manifest under a pseudonym. She travelled alone. But the hospital admission records. Sir, she checked in for an emergency C-section 3 days ago. There's a birth certificate filed. Alexander froze. The bottle of whiskey hovered halfway to his mouth. The baby. He had forgotten about the baby. In his pursuit of the merger, the child had become an abstraction to him, a nuisance. Did it survive? Alexander asked, a strange emotion flickering in his chest. Yes. A boy. Leo Mercer. Alexander closed his eyes. A son. He had a son, and he had an ex-wife who held his life in her hands. "Get me a plane," Alexander said. "I'm going to Zurich." "Sir, the board has grounded the corporate jet," his assistant whispered from the doorway. "They froze your expense accounts." Alexander let out a guttural roar and threw the whiskey bottle against the wall. "Then book me commercial. I don't care. Just get me to Zurich." 20 hours later, Alexander Mercer walked into the lobby of Haus Edelweiss. He looked like a wreck. He was wearing a wrinkled suit, he hadn't shaved, and he smelled of stale alcohol and airplane air. He marched up to the reception desk. "I am Alexander Mercer. My wife is here. Isabella Mercer." The receptionist, a stern Swiss woman who looked like she could bend steel bars, didn't even look up. "We have no patient by that name." "Don't lie to me." Alexander slammed his hand on the desk. "I know she's here. I am her husband." "Ex-husband, soon to be," a voice said from the balcony above. Alexander looked up. Isabella stood at the top of the grand staircase. She looked different. Her long hair was gone, chopped into a chic, sharp bob that framed her face. She wore a simple white linen robe. She looked tired, pale, and fragile, holding on to the railing for support. But her eyes were burning with a cold, blue fire. "Bella!" Alexander breathed. He started to move toward the stairs. 2 massive orderlies stepped in front of him, blocking his path. "Let me see her," Alexander demanded. "Bella, we need to talk. The company. The code. It's crashing. You have to unlock it." "I know," Isabella said calmly, descending 1 step. "I watched the stock ticker. $8.50 a share. Congratulations, Alex. You're officially a millionaire instead of a billionaire. How does it feel to be poor?" "Stop playing games," Alexander pleaded, his voice cracking. "Omnicorp walked. The SEC is investigating me for fraud because the IP is locked. I could go to jail, Bella. Do you hear me? Jail." "I heard you clearly at the Pierre Hotel," Isabella said softly. "You said I was unfit. You said I was hysterical. You said you would take the baby." "I didn't mean it," Alexander lied, desperation leaking from every pore. "It was the stress, the deal." "Bella, please, I'll give you anything. You want half? I'll give you half. Just put your thumb on the scanner. Unlock the code." Isabella reached the bottom of the stairs, staying safely behind the wall of security. "I don't want half, Alex. I don't want money." "Then what? What do you want?" Isabella pulled a folded document from her robe pocket. It wasn't a legal document. It was a handwritten note. "I want you to resign," she said. "Publicly. I want you to admit that the code was mine. I want you to sign over full custody of Leo to me, with 0 visitation rights. And I want you to transfer your remaining voting shares to a trust in Leo's name, which I will control until he is 21. "You want my company?" Alexander gaped at her. "You want to steal my company?" "It was never your company, Alex," she said. "It was my mind. You just sold the packaging." "I won't do it," Alexander snarled, his old arrogance flaring up. "I'll fight you. I'll drag this through the courts. I'll tell them you sabotaged the code maliciously." Isabella shrugged. "Go ahead. But the code degrades exponentially. In 48 hours, the data corruption becomes permanent. There won't be a company left to fight over. It will be 0. And you will be the CEO who presided over the biggest tech collapse in history. You'll be a laughingstock, and you'll be broke." She turned around and started walking back up the stairs. "Tick-tock, Alex." "Wait!" Alexander screamed. He looked around the lobby. People were watching. He looked at his phone. The stock had dropped another $1 while they were talking. He was cornered. He was beaten. He slumped against the reception desk, sliding down until he hit the floor. He put his head in his hands and wept. Ugly, heaving sobs of a man who had lost his godhood. "Fine," he choked out. "Fine, I'll sign." Isabella stopped. She didn't turn around. She just signaled to a man standing in the shadows of the hallway. It was Saul Berkowitz. He stepped out, wearing a rumpled suit, holding a tablet and a stylus. "Hello, Alex," Saul said, a grim smile on his face. "I have the documents ready. DocuSign, okay?" Alexander signed. He signed away his title. He signed away his son. He signed away his legacy. Saul checked the signatures. "It's done." Isabella turned back. She walked over to Alexander, who was still on the floor. She looked down at him, not with hate, but with pity. "The biometric scanner is on the server login page," she said. "I'll unlock it remotely in 10 minutes. But Alex?" He looked up, his eyes red and swollen. "The next time you underestimate a woman," Isabella said, "make sure she isn't the one who wrote your operating system." She turned and walked away, back toward the nursery, back to her son, leaving Alexander Mercer alone in the lobby of a Swiss clinic, a king with no crown. 1 year later. The winter wind whipped down Fifth Avenue, biting and cold, but inside the penthouse office of the newly rebranded Phoenix Systems, formerly Mercer Dynamics, the air was warm and smelled of fresh orchids. Isabella sat behind the desk. The massive oak slab where Alexander used to prop his feet up and declare himself a god. She had replaced his leather executive chair with one of ergonomic mesh, and the walls, once adorned with ego-stroking portraits of Alexander shaking hands with presidents, were now covered in whiteboard paint, filled with complex code architecture and photos of her son, Leo. "Madam Chairwoman?" Isabella looked up. It was Saul Berkowitz. He looked different these days. He was wearing a tailored suit, his hair was trimmed, and he no longer looked like a man crushed by the weight of parking ticket disputes. He was now the chief legal officer of a $40 billion company. "Saul, please," Isabella smiled, closing her laptop. "I told you, when it's just us, it's Bella." "Old habits," Saul chuckled, placing a file on her desk. "I just wanted to give you the quarterly report. Since you implemented the new ethical sourcing protocols and open-sourced the educational version of the neural link, public sentiment is at an all-time high. Stock is trading at 210. Omnicorp is actually asking to license our tech now instead of buying us out." "Let them beg for a while," Isabella said, her eyes gleaming with a sharp intelligence. "We don't need their money. We have the code." "There is one other thing," Saul said, his demeanor shifting. He looked uncomfortable. "He's downstairs." Isabella didn't flinch. She didn't need to ask who. "Did he make an appointment?" she asked coolly. "No, security stopped him at the turnstiles. He's claiming he has a right to see the shareholders. He's causing a scene." Isabella stood up. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the city. "Let him up, but tell security to escort him. And Saul, stay in the room." 5 minutes later, the double doors opened. Alexander Mercer walked in. The change was shocking. The man who had once worn $5,000 tuxedos as casually as pajamas was now wearing a suit that was clearly off the rack and ill-fitting. He had gained weight, his face puffy from what looked like too many nights of cheap alcohol. His arrogant shark grin was gone, replaced by a nervous, twitchy grimace. He looked around the office, his old office, and his eyes landed on Isabella. She looked radiant. Motherhood and power suited her. She was wearing a cream-colored power suit that accentuated her strength. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like a queen. "Hello, Alex," she said, not inviting him to sit. "Bella," Alexander said, his voice rough. "You look good. Really good." "State your business, Alex. I have a board meeting in 20 minutes. Alexander swallowed hard. He fidgeted with his hands. I saw the news. The stock price. You've done amazing things with the company. Truly. I just unlocked its potential, she said. Something you never bothered to understand because you were too busy looking at yourself in the mirror. I know, he said quickly. I know I messed up. I was arrogant. I was blind. But Bella, I've changed. This last year, it broke me. Chloe left me the second the money dried up. I'm living in a studio in Jersey City. I'm consulting for startups, but nobody wants to hire me. They call me toxic. You are toxic, Alex, Isabella said simply. I'm a father, Alexander burst out, tears welling in his eyes. I have a son I've never met. I want to see him. Please. I know I signed the papers. I know I have no rights. But surely as a mother, you can't keep a boy from his father. Isabella walked around the desk. She stopped 3 feet from him. She smelled of success. He smelled of desperation. Do you remember the night at the Pierre, Alex? She asked softly. Alexander flinched. Bella, please. Do you remember? She pressed. You told the world I was unfit. You told me I was nothing but an incubator. You were ready to take him from me and give him to a 22-year-old Instagram model who thought a nursery should be chrome and stark white. I was wrong, Alexander sobbed. I'm begging you. Isabella looked at him, searching for any sign of genuine love. But all she saw was a man who had lost his toys and wanted them back. He didn't want Leo because he loved him. He wanted Leo because Leo was the heir to the fortune Alexander had lost. He wanted a way back in. Leo is happy, Isabella said, her voice ice cold. He is 1 year old. He loves blueberries and the color yellow. He has my eyes and my patience. And he has a family. Me, Saul, the people who actually care about him. I can be part of that family, Alexander pleaded. No, Isabella said. You can't, because you chose money over family a long time ago. You made your bet, Alex. Now you have to live with the loss. She pressed the intercom on her desk. Security? Mr. Mercer is leaving. 2 large guards stepped into the room. You can't do this, Alexander shouted as they grabbed his arms. I built this place. I am Alexander Mercer. You're nobody, Isabella said, turning her back on him to look out the window. Goodbye, Alex. As they dragged him out, screaming, Isabella didn't feel a triumph. She didn't feel joy. She just felt a profound sense of closure. The ghost that had haunted her was gone. The door clicked shut. Silence returned to the office. Are you okay? Saul asked gently. Isabella took a deep breath. She looked at the framed photo of Leo on her desk, his gummy smile wide and bright. I'm perfect, she said. She checked her watch. Cancel the board meeting, Saul. Madam Chairwoman, it's with the European investors. Reschedule it, Isabella said, grabbing her purse. My son takes his first swimming lesson in an hour. And unlike my ex-husband, I'm not going to miss the important things for a business deal. She walked out of the office, her heels clicking rhythmically on the marble floor. She took the elevator down to the lobby, walking past the giant mural in the atrium. It used to be a portrait of Alexander. Now it was a digital art installation representing the neural link, millions of connections, glowing and alive. She stepped out onto Fifth Avenue. The wind was still cold, but the sun was breaking through the clouds. A black town car was waiting. Thomas, her old driver who Alexander had fired, was holding the door open. She had rehired him immediately with a massive raise. Home, Mrs. Mercer? Thomas asked. No, Thomas. She smiled, sliding into the car. Take me to the future. The car pulled away, merging into the traffic of New York City. Isabella Mercer, the invisible woman, the discarded wife, the incubator, settled back into the leather seat. She had won the war, not by fighting with fists, but by knowing her own worth. She took out her phone and opened the app that controlled the company's core algorithm. It was running smoothly, 100% efficiency. She typed in a command, "Status check." The system replied, "Welcome home, Commander." Isabella smiled, locked the phone, and looked out at the city that was finally, truly hers. And that is how Isabella Mercer took back her life. It wasn't just about the money. It was about proving that you never, ever underestimate a woman who holds the keys to your castle. Alexander learned the hard way that arrogance comes with a heavy price tag, about $10 billion worth. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel and tells YouTube you want more stories like this. And hey, if you want to be part of our storytelling squad, smash that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. I post new drama stories every week. What would you have done if you were Isabella? Would you have let Alexander see the baby, or did he get exactly what he deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.